Toward the end of last year and into the off season, I was looking to make some form changes as I felt like my form was missing a couple of things to really get the full potential for my distance. And I feel like I'm really close to meeting that full potential in terms of like where my form is at. Now in terms of like reps and stuff, obviously there's a lot more to go, but there's a couple of things that I've realized I had to fix with my reach back that I worked pretty much all off season figuring out, working on, drilling into my form to where I feel like I've got it all pretty figured out at this point. I have 4 points that deal with the reach back that I think have kind of leveled up my distance in a way where I can get really easy distance at a pretty low effort in a way that I haven't before, and I think is also leading to just an overall increase in maximum distance as well. So all of these in one way or another are gonna kind of have to deal with the reach back. I think the reach back is kind of an interesting term, and I think the word reach back kind of made me want to do the form motions associated with it in a certain way that might have been detrimental to my form being where it should be. Basically, what I would do is I would come from wherever the disc was, which was a pretty good position usually, and I would try and reach across my body in order to get the disc back. So I would initiate the turning of my upper body and getting the disc behind me by starting to reach the disc across my body. And what I think this ended up doing was creating a pretty big problem, which was that I was trying to go through an area that wasn't ready for the disc to go through it. I have to open up my body before the disc can start coming up behind me. You see some people sort of start their reach back in a way where they kind of come out. I would think Paul Oman, Silas Schultz, they kind of come out like this and then back like this so they can start their reach back really early and then get two behind them. I'm not really interested in doing that kind of out and around reach back. I really want to simplify things and keep it going straight back. And I think in doing the thing that I was doing, which was trying to reach across my body as an initiation for the throw, was causing me some problems, some timing problems and some sort of positioning problems with the disc. So what I instead have been doing is letting my body rotate, leaving the disc at the center of my body, letting it rotate first, and then going behind me. I would say almost all of the top throwers in the world do this to an extent. I noticed this watching Gannon Buhr, Simon Lizotte, AB, all of these guys keep the disc kind of close to their body. They start the rotation, and then once they start having their body looking behind their target, they start to bring the disc out. What I was doing was starting this motion and then reaching back. And that's why if you look at my old form, you'd see my arm kind of curling out like this, kind of doing this, because I had to kind of go around myself to reach back. So it'll lead to a little bit of rounding. You can kind of circumvent that and remove that rounding as you pull through, but it's a lot easier to just let your body rotate a little bit and then have it come out like this, because what you end up doing is having this kind of floppy arm that's coming out around and back, and it's not very controlled, and it leads to some problems when you're trying to pull the disc forward. Keeping it really simple, rotating your body, reaching straight back, it allows for an easy and explosive pull through once you want to start coming into the power pocket, as opposed to this complicated, rounded, confusing reach back motion that I was doing before. So the first tip essentially is allow yourself, your body, to start initiating that reach back, right? You're going to get into that last step. Allow your body to start turning without moving this disc at all. Keep it in the same spot, and then once you start getting behind you, that's when you can start to let it go behind you. And that's kind of like, in essence, what you're doing. You're leaving it behind you. You're not really reaching. The reach back is kind of a misnomer in that you're not trying to reach. You're trying to just let your body get to that position, and then you're just going to move forward. It's going to come behind you. I mean, you are kind of initiating kind of a reach with the way you do it, at least the way I think about it. I'm kind of reaching back to make sure I get to that full reach back, and it helps with the timing a little bit and just like the mind-muscle connection, but you're not trying to reach across your body like I was doing in the past. Now, the second thing that I've worked on, and I've noticed a couple of people do this as well, is it's basically a way for me to do that in a more like efficient or like feel-oriented manner, because it does feel to me a little weird to have the disc right here, turn and reach back and pull through. And what I noticed some people do, and what I noticed was really, really good for me, is I kind of have the disc go out and in and then out. I'm kind of putting it off my body a little bit, and then I'm bringing it in. I'm having this motion be coming in while I'm turning and then reaching back. What this does is it stops me from trying to reach back too early, and it helps time everything up really well. So it's this kind of little rhythmic cue that I do for myself where I'm just kind of going like this, bang. And you'll see some of the people that kind of go out like this. It's the same thing. They're trying to time it up. And I think you'll see a lot of people have this in their throw. Paul McBeth definitely does this little move right here. It's just to keep everything going the same way. Some people can do it really well. They can just, Simon holds it right here and just reaches back without having to really time it up too well. Maybe there's like some very small movements or cues that you can't really see that well. But I find just a little subtle kind of bounce off the body where I'm going out, in, and then back. Just helps time everything up. It makes sure I'm getting the disc inside and then coming back. So those are the first 2 points. It's really all about just getting that reach back to be straight behind you, getting to the point where you want it to be, which is gonna be, if you were to draw a line like straight back, you basically just wanna be a little bit over from there, because you don't wanna have to be coming straight through your body. But like I've said in other videos and other form cues, we wanna be bringing the disc into our body like this. We wanna be pulling into our chest and creating that power pocket. And so we wanna be straight behind us so we can do that. If we're way out here, pulling into our chest is just, you're not getting as powerful of a power pocket that way. When you're coming from here, it's way more powerful. So that's kind of the big two, fixing the reach back and the timing and sort of the efficiency of it. The other two are a little bit more subtle, but I think really, really, really important if you can get them right. Hey, just so you know, I still have these mystery boxes, $40 for 5 premium discs. I promise they're all great discs. Everyone who's gotten one so far has loved them. If you want a great deal for some discs and you want to support me, these mystery boxes are currently the best way to do it. You can just go to the first link in all of my videos in the description. It goes to my website where you can get local lessons and any merchandise, which is currently just these mystery boxes, but I will be getting some other stuff on there soon, maybe some apparel, maybe some discs. Stay tuned to find out. But for right now, these mystery boxes are the best way to support me. So if you want to, please get one. So the third one is going to be all about the wrist curl. I think it's wildly, 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 wildly important to have your wrist curled up, right? You don't want to be holding it like this, curl that wrist up, and you want to get it so it's almost touching your arm. You don't necessarily need to be curled up that much. It might be a little bit straining to be curled up that much, but get a little bit of a wrist curl. What this does is it helps you when you pull in to come right into your body. And if you think about a whip is all curled up, right? So my shoulder through my arm to the disc, if we're holding the disc like this or like flat, we're basically taking the last like third of the whip basically and just straightening it out. When you crack a whip, it unravels to the very last tip, and that very last tip is your hand and your wrist. And so we want to make sure that's curled up, because when we're unraveling, it's going to have more potential energy to unravel as the disc comes out of our hand, but also it allows us to get into the power pocket with a ton of potential energy. If we're kind of like this, just feel it. You know, you can feel it right here. Oh, this disc is like inside of this pocket. It's ready to explode. If I'm like this or like this, it's kind of just coming through and flopping out of the power pocket. Even though we're in a really good position with our arm, if our wrist isn't curled up, we're kind of losing a lot of that potential of the disc to fly out of our hands. Like the same thing with the whip. We want it to be curled until the very last little bit. And if you watch a whip in slow motion, the very end, when it really accelerates, it's that tiny little bit of the end of the whip that really unravels at the very end and then snaps out. That's where we want to be. We want to be curled up and let it snap out at the very end. It helps with our reach back, keeps it nice and compact and straight. It also helps keep the disc in a really, like I said, a really kind of compact location. Just feels closer to my body. It's a little bit easier. And then we can just pull straight in. I've found not only does it help with my distance, this helps me throw further with way less effort, and it makes everything feel so much more simple. I don't really have to try that hard to throw the disc on a nice, straight, solid line with good power. Now the last thing is going to be to do with your grip, particularly the amount of like force you're putting into your grip. I know a lot of people say that you don't want to grip the disc too hard, and I think that's kind of true. You don't want to be like death gripping the disc when you're throwing it, but you do want to have the disc in a good solid position when you're pulling through. And something I found myself doing, along with sort of not having my wrist curled up, and having the wrist curled up will certainly help with this last tip. But something I noticed myself doing was I would get to the reach back and I would pull in, but my grip just wouldn't be as good, and I feel like the disc would almost be like falling out of the position it was in just a little bit, enough for it not to really either come out clean or come out with a lot of power. And so what I've been thinking about recently is making sure that as I'm coming to the apex of my reach back, I'm tightening down on the disc and making sure that when I pull it forward, it's coming with me with the full power of my body and everything that I'm creating. Because we're not just a whip, we're a whip with something attached to the end of it. And if the thing that we're using to attach it, our hand, is not holding onto it very well, it doesn't matter how hard we whip our arm, it's not going to be able to keep up. It's going to lag behind. And us losing that grip a little bit will make us lose the distance. That's why you're going to get a little bit of it slipping out of your hand. It'll kind of make it unravel. And like I said, having it curled up helps. When you're curled up like this, it's really easy. It's a lot easier to keep a good hold of the disc, when it's unraveled, it's a little bit harder. Now, obviously, like I said, you don't want to like death grip the disc so it's not going to come out of your hand. There's going to be kind of a sweet spot, but really making sure you can feel yourself grab onto the disc so that when you're pulling it through, you have full control of everything that's happening as you're coming through. I find that I think a lot of people actually don't really quite realize this, and you can kind of tell in the way that they hold the disc. And maybe this is more going to be geared towards someone like me who has smaller hands. Maybe someone with bigger hands doesn't have too much of a problem hanging onto the disc. For me, I got to squeeze out every last little bit of efficiency I can get when it comes to my grip, because I can barely even hold on to like 13 or 14 speeds. I really only hold on to up to 12 speeds. I don't throw anything faster than that, honestly, just because the grip doesn't feel that good. And so it's really important that I'm making sure my grip is super efficient. So if you're anything like me, you want to make sure that you're grabbing onto the disc. So as you're reaching back, hold down on that disc and tighten it down as you're pulling through. Obviously, you know, you have to find out what's going to be the best sort of calibration for you, but you're going to find a sweet spot where you can pull the disc forward with a lot of force, curled up, ton of potential energy, but also allow it to rip out without kind of grip locking it or holding onto it a little bit too hard. So sort of just an overview. First two, like I said, you could do this little move to help yourself get the rhythm down of the throw, but also the main thing, keep it tight into your body until you start to turn and then allow the disc to come behind you. We want to keep our wrist curled up. It allows us to get all that potential energy out of the power pocket, really use that whip analogy to its full potential. And then we want to make sure that when we get to the end of the reach back, we're holding down on the disc and not letting it slip out of our hands or unravel that whip as we're pulling through. We want to keep everything tight and together so that we can get the full potential energy out of the disc when we get into the power pocket. I'll try and throw, I've been working on this a lot, but I'll try and throw a throw where I'm kind of doing my old form and I'm gonna not curl the disc up. I'm gonna not really think about tightening my grip at the end. It's really cold out right now, so my hands are pretty cold, so it might not be the best demonstration, but I kind of want to try and show what the difference is between doing these sort of 3 or 4 things. I guess you can count the first 2 tips as one, but doing these tips and then not doing them, because I think there's a pretty big difference. So I'm going to try my best to kind of just start with the reach back, to not grab onto the disc as much at the end, don't get my wrist curled up, and I'm just not going to do really any of those cues. I'm going to try and throw the disc how I used to.
Just a quick disclaimer before you see either of these throws. I just want to point out that it was quite cold and I was not dressed for the weather. It was like 35 degrees out and windy. And standing around filming this video got me and my hands very cold. To add on to that, I had a pretty bad cut on my throwing hand that was making it a little bit painful to throw. So these throws are not going to be the best example for what I'm talking about, but they will show a little bit. So I'm going to keep them in the video. But just keep in mind, I'm throwing under some difficult circumstances.
Obviously, I'm very cold right now, and that was a little bit painful for my hands, but you can kind of see how there just wasn't a ton of control there. It looked a little lackadaisical. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure the disc is coming out behind me. I'm going to curl my wrist up, make sure that grip is nice and tight. Just so much better. Like just so much better. It really felt like I had control of that disc the whole way through. Tightened the grip up, kept it curled up, didn't reach across my body. I kept it tight into my body until I reached back. I just feel like those things all together really help the shot feel like I'm in full control of everything that's happening all the way through, and it helps squeeze out that little bit of extra power that I might have been leaking before because of it. So really there's like no downsides to any of these. It helps with absolutely everything. It helps with throwing shots at high power at pretty low effort, and it really helps with consistency and making sure you're throwing the same way every single time. And then it can also just overall increase your maximum distance potential, getting that full potential out of the whip, like I said. So yeah, this is what I worked on in the off season. Obviously I had a couple other videos, but I really feel like my form's coming in to a pretty good spot. I have my first tournament coming up this weekend. I'll be traveling up Friday to play the FDR Fools Fest down in Yorktown Heights. Should be fun, hopefully. All of this stuff that I've worked on in the off season, mental, physical, form, I hope it all works out, and I hope you guys can have a great season too with some of these changes and that I've helped you in some way. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace.